Now I've just spent almost an hour sanding this down to get this water-based varathane off, at least as much as I can. I know I can't get it out of the pores. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this number 900. And okay, that's the French side. Here's the English side. Okay, so it's number 900. Now you know how I like to be honest in my workshop videos. This is not the same tin that I bought in Kelowna. It's the exact same kind, a different tin. I knew they wouldn't let me take something that's sort of flammable on the airplane, so I didn't even try. I just bought another tin here in Winnipeg. Anyway, same stuff though. And I know that there's going to be people ask me about the air cleaner. So it works really good for something like this. It just draws the sawdust slowly into the filters, and then every so often I'll just vacuum out the filters. And if you want to know how this was made, just look for, I had to look it up because I forgot what I called the video. It's called the Workshop Air Cleaner. And go to part 1, because I just know that you're going to want to see the whole thing. I hope. So anyway, I guess next thing I got to do is just clean all this sawdust off of here. I'm going to use a high pressure hose, and oh, I see a little place more here where I should do some more sanding. Not quite as good as it could be. Now you're probably wondering, so why did the dummy buy it in Kelowna if he knew he couldn't bring it home to Winnipeg on the airplane? Well, at the time, I thought I was going to be taking the bus back. I even had the Greyhound ticket. However, circumstances happened that I had to stay a little longer, so I flew back. Okay, we'll continue on. Now this episode was made over a period of about 4 weeks, and as I went along, I changed my mind a lot. I know it might seem a little bit annoying at times. Well, sorry about that. Now, one problem that I often have is I tend to put it on too thick. I want to be very careful here not to do that. I can always put on more coats later. There, now I can handle it without getting my fingers all covered with varathane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the excess off for the first coat. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. Now I am going to be sanding it down and recoating it 4, maybe 5 more times. I won't do this on the last coat, of course. For sure I'm not going to get any slumping here on the sides. Okay, let that dry overnight now. Then I'm going to do this 3 or 4 more times, and hopefully it's going to have a really nice shine. 2 days has passed now, and I put on another coat yesterday with the brush, and I had a real problem getting it on evenly. Very poor job. I'm not going to do that again. Well, there's been a change in plans here, and that is I am not going to brush it on. I am going to wipe it on. Probably going to have to do, I'm guessing, maybe up to 10 coats, because I find when I wipe it on, I'm not getting it on very thick. However, when I was brushing it on, no matter how careful I was getting little globs on the corners, and it just, yeah. So anyway, that's the change in plans. I'm going to be wiping it on. Oh, by the way, I just sanded it down with 800 grit here. Yeah, nice and smooth. So right now I'm not too worried about getting it on too thick, because I know I'm going to wipe it off later anyway. But I was just having a terrible time with it running. Guess I'm just not good at this. Well, that should have gone into all the little pores. Okay, now I'll just lightly wipe it off here. I've heard that there is such a thing as wipe-on poly. However, I don't think this is it. Alright. Now I'll put my little jig on, and don't want to wipe too much off here. Now these don't have to go in very far, just far enough to catch. Okay. By the way, these little paint brushes, got them from the dollar store. They were 6 for $1. So I bought several packages. I think I bought about a dozen packages altogether. So I don't mind, just throwing this little brush out after, because it's only, what, about 15 cents or less? I mean, when you're spending $1.50 for a cup of coffee these days, like you can see where it's running there. But then, of course, I deliberately put it on extra thick, so I hope I'm holding this thing so you can see it. Okay, we'll let this dry now and see how it is in 24 hours. Sand it down, do it all again. Now I'm going to try an experiment here. Instead of brushing it on first, I'm going to just go ahead and wipe it on. I'm going to use these little lint-free cloths that a friend of mine gave me. And I'm just sort of going to wipe it on here. See if that'll work. Now this should be putting a very thin film of the varathane on. And my theory is that if I rub it like this, any fingerprints are going to sort of get dissolved. Because I think that, excuse me, I think that if I don't do that and the fingerprint is there, it has a tendency to not want to stick too good to where the fingerprint was. At least it makes sense to me. Now this may not work, although in a few hours after this sort of dries. Okay, and I'll put my little jig on. I don't think this is going to work. I think I'm going to have to sand. That's kind of a fun experiment. Okay, I think I got it all over. Check it out in about 6 hours or so. Now this is after about the 4th coat, and you'll notice right in the center where it's not shiny, Well, that's what I'm talking about where I'm saying it separates. Now, I did actually apply the varathane there, and it sort of parts like the Red Sea or something. Yeah, I'm going to move my light around here a little bit, and maybe you'll be able to see a little better. Actually, I don't want to see better, I want a solution. Now you'll notice that all those little pores are filled right up. However, where it's not shiny, it's just not thick and glossy like it is off to the sides. Well, several days has passed now, and I've pretty well given up trying to get the perfect finish without sanding in between coats. And I couldn't figure out why is it that nobody else seems to be having this problem. And what I was doing is I was Googling varathane, urethane, separating. What I should have been doing was typing in urethane beading, like the way water beads up on the hood of a freshly waxed car. Well, then there was all kinds of stuff. Turns out I'm not the only one with this problem. And it also turns out that about the only thing you can do is sand in between coats. Well, that I pretty well already figured out for myself. Now, a real easy way to split this down the middle, or rather down the side, I want to cut it like here, probably an inch in, would be to pass it through the bandsaw like this. Problem is, when the blade exits the underside, there's the distinct possibility there's going to be tear out here. So I could do it like this, and the blade would enter in from the top and exit out the bottom. If there was a little tear out in the bottom, no big deal. However, there's also the chance that as I'm pushing it through, the blade is going to come to the edge here, and all of a sudden there's going to be very little wood there, and it's going to sort of spring out. Okay? And then there'll be tear out here. So I think I've come up with a solution. Now, if you watched the series on the mantle clock, you may recognize this thing. I used it for cutting the dial board. And I'm just reusing it now. I didn't throw it out. The idea is that this jig is going to hold the coin box nice and steady and at a bit of an angle. Now, the reason it's at a bit of an angle is so that as the blade exits this part of the 2x4, it'll still be in this part up here, and it won't be springing into the box. And the same idea when it exits out of the coin box up here, it'll still be in the 2x4 here. It'll just help stabilize everything. At least that's the plan. And sometimes things don't always go as planned. But we're going to soon know. Now, as you can see, I'm not pushing that thing through very smooth. Now, I wasn't planning to do it like that. I was planning on pushing it through nice and smooth, but for some reason, it was kind of sticking. I wonder why that's sticking. Could it be this thing? Now here's that tear out that I was talking about. It's on the bottom. And because it's on the bottom, probably nobody's going to even see it. Now you may remember a few episodes away back I was talking about the fact that I had accidentally squeezed the coin slot together and I was going to have to widen it later. Well, now it's later, and this is how I'm planning on doing it. And I think it's going to work out, if I'm very careful. Now this is aligned pretty good. After I get the aligning pins in, then I'll be able to take a carving knife and get these little sharp edges out here, and also trim it so that it looks perfectly flush. But actually it turned out very well. Can't complain. Now, even though these holes are drilled quite deep, these nails only have to go in maybe 1/4 of an inch. They just have to align the two pieces. No use having them any longer than they have to be. Now I'll just make a little mark there. I think I can see that. Now you can see here where I kind of broke a little piece out there, and what happened was I pushed the screw in, the head of the screw in, and then when I pulled it out, well, it caught. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to enlarge these holes a little bit, I guess. Then I thought, no, an easier way would be to just take the heads of the screws down a little bit. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Now I realized that I could put these screws into the metal lathe and turn them down to within 1/1000th of an inch of each other, but it doesn't have to be that fancy. That should be enough. Much better. Now you can see here that the hole is countersunk a long way. If I go like this, you can see that the head of the screw is going to go down quite a ways. So what I want to do is I want it only I'll get my hand out of the way here so you can see. I want only the last, 1/2 an inch of the threads to catch in the wood down here. I don't want it to be catching way up here. So I'm going to have to drill out the hole a little larger than it already is, and it'll have to be a little larger than the diameter of the threads. And then we're getting pretty close to finished here. Okay, that's as far down as the bit will go. And I think that'll be just about right. Yeah, that should put about 1/2 an inch of thread into the wood. That's a nice tight fit. But I got to do something about this tear out. I think I'm going to try and sand that down. And then maybe touch it up just a little bit with the Varathane. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get rid of all of this visible tear out, but I should be able to make it look a little bit better. I'm going to start out with 220 here and then work my way up to probably 600 or 800, and then maybe just put 1 or 2 coats of Varathane on. After all, it is just the bottom. Right now, while the final coat of Varathane is drying, there's something I'd like to mention. Well, we're almost at the end of this video, finally. And remember I was complaining about this thing not going smooth? Well, I've concluded that I had this way too tight, and I was shoving it up against the fence, and it was sort of binding on the fence. Maybe if I waxed my fence, that might help. Anyway, I want to show you this. Now here we have a perfect example of the tear out I was talking about when the blade exits a piece of wood. So I was coming along, and I guess I wasn't going too smoothly, and the blade sort of popped out. And maybe pop isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. And it pushed out the last little sliver of wood there instead of cutting it out. Now, had I had another piece of wood tied up against this, the blade would have gone from this piece into the other piece, and I wouldn't have got that tear out. Most of you people already know about that, but I thought I'd just mention it because this is a perfect example here of what I was talking about. Well, folks, we're about as done as we're going to get here. Now, these screws do not have to be real tight. They just have to be snug. Because if you over tighten them, you're going to end up being known as the deacon that broke the little children's coin box. And you don't want that to happen. And for those of you who don't know, this is a Canadian $1 piece and a Canadian $2 piece. We call them loonies and toonies here in Canada. Now, I know that some of the deacons are going to complain about how hard this is to open. Well, let's just see how long it actually takes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. I realize that the watch is a little bit out of focus. In fact, it's a big bit out of focus. But this video is getting a little bit long in the tooth already, and I just didn't feel like having to reshoot this scene. Okay. And one more. And remember, they don't have to be too tight. And stop. Okay, 57 seconds. That's under a minute. Now, I'm sure you don't want to be known as the lazy deacon who couldn't take up 57 seconds to open the little children's beloved coin box here. So, yeah. Oh yeah, and about this Varathane. I've concluded that I don't like the water base. This is a sample that I did with the water base. It just doesn't have the luster that you get with the oil base. That's my personal opinion. There could be other people that, they've got other ideas, and they might be right. Anyway, in the meantime, thanks for watching.